Despite this evidence, we have been met with silence. The silence has now become an accomplice to the injustice that has been done to John. As healthcare professionals, we recognize the importance of accountability by those in positions of trust. John, our son, was respected and trusted by his peers and by the faculty members who taught him at the University of Toronto. He was a third-year pharmacy student at the time of his death, and he was planning to apply for medical school upon graduation. Sarah, our daughter, is a pharmacist. She holds a master's degree in clinical epidemiology and biostatistics. She is respected and trusted by the London Health Science Centre, where she works, and by the Canadian Agency for Drugs Technology in Health. Gloria holds a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing from the University of Western Ontario. She's managed intensive care units, emergency rooms, and taught critical care nursing at Algonquin College. Gloria will not be speaking today due to a heart condition. Our son-in-law, Dr. Wynne, is an orthopedic surgeon. I'm a dental surgeon. Growing up in Ontario, we have a profound respect for the law, which impacts our professional and personal lives. We believe that our laws and institutions, particularly those including the police and the coroners, are there to provide for public safety. And that's why we're here today. So when the investigating police officers, who were not homicide detectives, compromised vital evidence which demonstrated John's death to be suspicious, and when the chief coroner could not produce the initial investigative file, they lost our trust. There are many people who have generously supported our case over the years. I cannot mention them all today. However, I would like to thank one person who has shown leadership and courage. Bob Runciman has gained our trust because he is willing to expend his political capital to ensure that the laws of the province of Ontario are upheld. We are truly grateful to him for calling attention to John's case and hosting this media conference. To restore our trust, members of the legislature are being asked to support the motion that will be brought before the House by the Honourable Mr. Runciman. The Chief Coroner of Ontario will be asked to perform his duties and reclassify John's cause of death as undetermined so that a proper investigation can be done. This is not the time for partisanship, and we would appreciate support across all political parties. After 8 years, it is never too late to do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Mr. Runciman, I have a question for you. You must get a lot of families coming and approaching you with things of this nature. I'm just curious, what is it about the Connelis in this particular case that's made you push forward with this?
Well, I can't say I've had a lot of families with certainly the significant situation the Connelis have faced, but I was initially contacted by a close friend of mine who's become I think a close friend of the Connelis, a fellow by the name of Scott Newark, who was a former special counsel to the Office of Victims of Crime in Ontario and a former Crown Attorney in Alberta, and he was very concerned after reviewing the circumstances surrounding John's death and really talked to me. He provided me with background materials and information that he had provided then Chief Fantino with respect to concerns related to the police investigation, and suggested I meet with the Connelis. So it's moved from that point on, and really Scott is someone I have enormous respect for, and his background in the justice area and his real concerns about what's occurred here.
Can I ask? Yes. And actually, I'd like to know a lot more about the circumstances of the fall. I won't ask you about that now because I can get it later. And also, I think you're very brave to come here and talk about these very painful circumstances.
I would actually love to answer your question about the circumstances of the fall.
Well,
Because one of the issues that we do have
well,
is-
okay, how was the fall explained? Was it suggested he'd been drinking?
Let me put it this way. There is no evidence that John was ever on the roof. The evidence is that the hatch that he supposedly went through, the police notes will indicate that it was padlocked, it was photographed padlocked, it was photographed closed, and the notes indicate that the screws were intact. No one went through that hatch on December the 9th, 2001. The person who went through the hatch the following day was me. Those are the screws from the hatch. I collected those screws in the presence of Sergeant Fowler. I gave them to Sergeant Fowler, and I said to him, in the presence of Sarah, I said, "You will need these for evidence. No one's gone through that hatch." And he said to me, "The case is closed."
Can I ask you this then?
Yes.
I didn't want to ask you, and I don't suggest this is the truth at all. Was there any suggestion that your son had been drinking
John's toxicology was negative.
No, okay, thank you. Yes, and among other things,
Police found no alcohol or beer or liquor or alcohol in his apartment at all.
well, I sort of had to ask you. You're asking the Chief Coroner to reopen the investigation and for the House to pass a motion. And do you have any other recourses? To be honest, or to be frank, no, I always am frank. I don't have a lot of faith in this legislature to pass a motion that will suggest that the trappings of government and the workings of the justice system don't work properly. They will fall back on a suggestion that this is a legal matter and we don't interfere with the law. The law must take its course. Politicians must be above that, and I think you could expect to find that. Do you have any other recourse? And publicity is a good one, but do you have any other recourse? If the legislation...
Three questions, so let me answer. I'll get to your question. First of all, the issue that we have is that it was the Chief Coroner's responsibility to follow the law in the first place, which he did not. So it's the Chief Coroner's position to correct that by reclassifying the death. Even in the lives that we have to believe that the people who are in the legislature, the MPPs, would be able to do the right thing. Gloria and I are quite willing to put our reputations on the line. We're quite willing to sit here and debate any of the evidence with anyone that wants to be across the table from us. In terms of do we have any other recourse, the answer is yes.
What would the other recourse be?
Well, the court case that I refer to was Becken versus Young, and Becken took Young to court. And what transpired there was Dr. Young had to show that there was clear, cogent evidence to use a particular cause of death. And that's always an option. He lost that case.
Can you...
We would hope we don't have to do that.
Numerous cases, they're in the papers every day, of people being wrongly convicted of murder, which could be the case here. And, famous ones here was Morin, yes. Locally. The most famous of all, Marshall. It might have been Douglas Marshall, but I'm not sure. Donald Marshall, BC, and dozens of them in Winnipeg. It seems to happen every day in the Midwest. Soffeno, people wrongly convicted and freed. We're looking for the reverse of this, a person who, bringing a person to court and getting that person tried for murder and convicted. It's almost like in a small matter we'd call a citizen's arrest. Now, do you have any cases in which that course has worked? And I'm not suggesting it shouldn't be. I'm not suggesting it's too difficult, but do you have examples of where that...
I think the issue here is we don't want to make the same error that the police and the coroners have made. The process of an investigation begins by collecting the evidence, not forming a conclusion before you've collected the evidence. So you have to reclassify the death to open the investigation, then you can collect the evidence, then you can use that evidence to draw a proper conclusion. Because John's death was classified within minutes of his death, the case was closed, so the evidence was never collated. And a conclusion, they jumped to a conclusion before that. I'm not in a position to do that until the investigation has been carried out.
Just simply from the historical record cases, and I'm not suggesting you should have, but cases where people